everybody. Welcome to the Sharon and Joe Show. My name is Sharon.
Hi, everybody. My name is Joe.
So Joe and I have decided to delve into the forbidden topic, or at least an intimidating topic.
Yeah, it's a strange thing to navigate through when you want to talk about dating after narcissistic abuse, because everybody has different experiences. There might be a right, there might be a wrong, who knows? But Sharon and I differ in a couple ways, and we just wanted to bring it up to you. Maybe you could ask yourself a few questions in your head as far as, am I ready? Am I closed off? I never want to do it again because I don't want to trust anybody. So we're going to talk about it tonight. Just touch base on it a little bit.
Yeah, and you and I, we did date after narcissistic abuse, so we can talk. This is just our opinion and things that happened for us. But I think for anybody who's navigating life after a narcissistic entanglement, as we usually say, there's things that you want to do, or things that you're worried about, or things you're not sure how to do, and this is probably one of them.
And Sharon and I kid a lot because we were talking about, could you imagine dating somebody that was quote unquote normal? And that's quote unquote. Somebody that has never been through a narcissistic relationship or any kind of cluster B, say for like their first date to go out to dinner, and they want to know a little bit, like they want to delve and relive your life. But hey, so what happened in your past relationship? Why aren't you guys together? And this and that. And well, they gave me the silent treatment for like 3 months. They didn't talk to me, and then I think a year later she was gone for 10 days, and then after that they broke my nose, and then they called the cops on me.
Like it's totally normal, right?
We would be the ones raising the red flag. So
yes.
It's a blessing in a way, like if it, like for Sharon and I, because there's a deep admiration and respect for each other, and you know, the first thing you want to do in a relationship is start to begin to build it on trust.
Yeah.
It takes time and it's earned. And that was one of the things we want to talk about.
Yeah, I just want to backtrack just like a little bit. So for Joe and I talking about this, we have decided there's 4 things that are really probably in the forefront of your mind when you're starting to date or you're thinking about dating. And we thought we'd kind of go through each one. And this is just like we said, things like the way that it worked for us. But you know, Joe and I, we're very similar. We have a lot in common, obviously, but we do have a lot of differences, especially about stuff like dating and things like that.
And there are differences that we have, you know, like Sharon mentioned. And there's four things that we came up with just off the top of our head. There's many more and maybe less, but let's talk about it a little bit.
All right, so I'm going to kind of delve into each one. The first one I'm going to say is, you know, and let's just say, you know, you've been with a narcissist, you're different than other people. It's intimidating, and it's like what you said. There's like, I think there'd be a fear that you just couldn't do it. You know, you couldn't relate to people anymore. But if you did move forward, I think trust might be another big issue. So let's talk about trust after you've been with a narcissist. How can you be in another relationship and trust the person? Is this something that you struggled with?
I want to stress you guys because I can't stress it enough. I had to learn to love myself first. I had to learn what self-worth was. And I'm still learning today. And I had to build a relationship with God in order for me to be able to love anybody else truly. Because many of the narcissistic traits that narcissists have, we too have as empaths. Self-seeking, denial, control, delusional. Those were all things that I had.
We kind of just skipped over something now that you said that, because let's talk a little bit about where we were when we first started dating, because it wasn't just that we started dating. You know, I broke up with the narcissist, you know, on Tuesday and Wednesday I was looking for a man and found Joe.
Yeah, and I don't know if there's any time for anything, but in a nutshell, like we both were separated, like where we were no contact for over a year, and we began. I found Sharon on her site, or on her listening to her videos, and our relationship started off. We never even met, and we were talking every night. It was based on friendship, and through talking, it was based on trust, because we knew.
Were a certain point as well.
Oh, we were both separately.
Yeah.
Before we even met, on the road to recovery, the shadow work, the self inventory, the just looking at our own defects.
We weren't
emotionally
trauma. Sick the way that we had been when we were with the narcissist. We were at a certain point, and for you and I, it's been a real blessing for us. I don't know that this would happen to everybody, or maybe it does. We've been allowed, or it's worked for us, that we've been able to finish our recovery together. As far as you can say finish. I mean, Joe and I always, you know, I tell Joe all the time, you got the best version of me that I've ever been. And that's because after the narcissist, we do the shadow work, and you change who you are, and you wanna, this is your chance to have another life.
In all of it, we call it the triangle. All of it is based on a common faith that we both share in the God of our understanding and our Savior, Jesus. Now, everybody might have a different faith, and I respect all. For us, it was like a common faith, and it was friendship first.
It was very slow.
It was slow.
And we were at a certain point in our recovery.
Like we met on the path somewhere
Yeah.
along the line. It wasn't at the beginning. And it's only through God that, first off, he did the impossible for me and saved me from narcissistic abuse. He opened up my eyes to my own trauma, and he blessed us. And there's nothing special about me, guys. A lot special about Sharon, but I didn't deserve any of this. It was a gift from God.
Well, let me ask you, just to kind of get back to what we were saying, what do you think about trust? Was trust an issue? Did you not trust me, or did you fear you couldn't trust me? Or go ahead and spill the tea.
I don't know if I could say I had you underneath the microscope, but any mistakes that you made, every word that you said, every action that you took, I paid close attention to. Like almost like hypervigilant, but except where I was like examining you and how you were.
Were you waiting for me to mess up or something?
I was
lie,
just, okay, maybe she's not a narcissist, but what else could she be?
Did you fear I was some type of predator?
No, I didn't fear that you were a predator. I didn't completely know you yet.
Yeah.
And I learned through, like, which is a good thing, I learned through my own experiences that you have to pay attention, and you have to have your eyes open. And at the same time, like, continue to work on myself and my mistakes and stuff so I could grow as a human being.
You know, now that we're saying this, I feel like our situation would be so different than other people's.
I wouldn't recommend how we met.
No.
Was purely, like, it had God's fingerprints all over it. I would not recommend how we met.
No, we met a crazy way, but a benefit to that. So for those of you that don't know, we didn't meet in person. We had spoken on the phone every single day for 3 months, and we were constantly in contact, but we only met a few times before we moved in together. So I get, like, that's like beyond the scope of this video, but I agree. I wouldn't recommend it.
You guys would know, like, if you heard our story before, like, yeah, this is nothing I would recommend, but it just so happened that God blessed us.
But it aided me with trust with you, because I think if you were some guy I met, like if I lived, whatever down the street, and we started dating, I think trust might have been an issue, and I could see, but because we weren't in person, there was only so much you could do to me. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The beautiful part about it is we became friends first.
Yeah.
And usually, like, if you were like 2 streets over,
I highly recommend this, you guys, if you can make this work.
We became best friends first. And you ever talk to somebody that had a similar experience to you, and you could just see in their eyes that they weren't bullshitting you, like they knew. Yeah. And I think being educated about narcissism, and not only that, but there's a lot of, like, disorders and stuff that I don't know of, like, helped me, like, just to protect myself, to make sure that there was no boundaries crossed, to having my own ideals and stuff like that. So it was cool. It was actually really good.
Well, it worked out for us, and that really would have affected me trust-wise. I mean, I really think, like I said, if we were in person all the time, that I think trust would have been an issue. So I think that's something that would be natural for anybody who is beginning to date to think about or to worry about.
I know this is weird, kind of, but, like, I was wondering, like, do I trust myself?
Yeah.
Like, am I, because when you're on the path of spirituality, things aren't like the way I lived before. Like, I was running on self-will, and this was like God's will, so it was very different.
Yeah.
It's like, am I spiritually mature enough to grow in this relationship? Am I spiritually mature enough to just put God first and be the leader of
Let
this
me
new
bump
family?
that forward a little bit, because that's actually the second thing that we're going to talk about is fear. So let's talk a little bit about fear, because it sounds like what you're saying is fear. And that's another thing that would be, that would be on your mind.
Yeah, I kind of veered off there, but it went right into fear.
Yeah.
Exactly. I always use the acronym for fear is false evidence appearing real, or F everything and run. And I think I was I would say cautious. At that time of my recovery, faith began to grow. I began to feed faith more and fear less.
You also moved so slow.
And we did. It was very slow, and it was cautious, but I wasn't looking for anybody, you guys. I didn't have a closed mind that said, like, I'll never trust anybody again. But that was the last thing. It was not a priority. And it's the same, I think Sharon could agree with that. It wasn't a priority for her, too. So by that time in my recovery, it was just being more cautious than afraid.
Yeah. Yeah, I wasn't looking for somebody either. So in fear, for me, I think, and it was like our situation was just so different because we weren't together very often until we moved in together.
Yeah.
But fear for me would be my safety, and then, so not so much you, but I guess you hurting me in some way, whether
your
it was,
kids.
well, exactly.
The children.
Like there's this, I don't, it's different for a woman, I think, but for a man, when you're dating, if you have children by another man, your children have the odds of them getting hurt by anybody other than the mother's boyfriend is almost zero. So there's like that danger factor. In my situation, my ex doesn't help parent the kids, so I'm it. If something happens, that's not going to be okay for them. Or even if it was like, well, what if he broke my heart and I was so depressed, and things like that.
Kids,
yeah, exactly. So it was things that could affect the kids, or my physical safety, or theirs, of course. But my immediate fear would be, is he going to hurt me in some way, and that's going to affect the kids because I'm hurt.
Yeah, and again, I don't know if I would call that so much fear, because your actions are determine what you are. So it was faith, in a way, but it was empathetic. You're thinking about other people, like who's this going to affect.
Well,
I think those are good
when you're
things.
dating after any situation, you have kids. It's not just you. Like I'm effectively dating you and your kids, and vice versa. Mm-hmm.
In talking about that, I mentioned what else did we come up with?
We talked about recovery. And you kind of mentioned that earlier, and we should, expand on that a little bit. And if you've been with a narcissist, any other toxic individual, if you do not do enough shadow work, work on yourself to figure out why this happened, what you can learn from this. Yeah, exactly.
How screwed up am I?
Yeah, and not like in a bad way, but just to understand yourself so that as you move forward, the odds of you or anybody being in another narcissistic entanglement are huge if you don't work on yourself, because the same you that got in that relationship is going to get into the next relationship.
No, I can speak from experience, from not only myself but other people. When I got sober from alcohol and drugs and stuff many years ago, my mentor, the guy that helped me, he said, Joe, when you get into a relationship right away, recovery stops.
Yeah.
And it happened to me, and I didn't pick up again, thank God, but it happens to many people. So while I'm in this relationship with Sharon, the God of my understanding has to be number one. It has to be, because without that
impressed me about you. That was one of the first things, by the way. I'm sure I told you this before. Just your dependence and reliance on God. I don't come from a religious background, so this is not something I'm used to. It is now with you, but there were certain things you said that were very surprising to me, because you were never. You had standards right from the beginning. And I
explained them to you, like, this is what I mean by that.
And not that I didn't, but that, you were such a gentleman.
It was because without putting him first, I'll lose everything. My self-will will take over, and I don't always know what's best for myself. So I truly believe it. Do I live it all the time? No. But that was one of the stipulations, like, and I told Sharon too, like, she loves me more than anyone. I'm like, no, like, you need to remember, like, your God that saved you is number one. So we have this triangle where you have God on the top, and then Sharon and Joe. So we'll talk about recovery. It was important that while I was with Sharon, and maybe I was not scrutinizing, but looking at some mistakes and stuff like that, I had to look at myself and say, okay, what's my behavior like? Am I doing the best I can? Am I being the best version of myself I can? And so the recovery still has to be, because if recovery loses the priority, it's not going to be good.
Well, for you and I, recovery is a lifestyle. It's part of our lifestyle. It's something that we do together. I mean, Joe and I, we hardly ever fight. And we were talking the other day, and we're talking about how we've learned over time to relate to each other better, not to just like have anger pour out. And there's an empathy and an understanding, and
learning each other's love languages.
Yes, exactly. It makes such a difference. And that's just part of it, but there's also individual goals. We have couple goals and family goals, and it makes a huge difference.
Yeah, so I don't know if we should have used the word recovery or growth, because we both have recovered from a hopeless state of mind, body, and even this entanglement. We were hopeless, and we've recovered from that. We're no longer. It
almost seems, as crazy as this is, cellular. I'm a completely different person. Like Joe and I were laughing the other day. We were talking about our exes, trying to figure out what the hell happened. Like how did this happen for them? It was bad enough for us, but It just, I don't know, it's probably for another video.
We both experienced a spiritual experience before we met each other, and it's just we've recovered from a hopeless state of mind and body, and we are no longer recovered. We're no longer technically in recovery. I would maybe replace that word in this aspect of it as spiritual growth.
Yeah.
Because I don't know, some people argue with the word, recovery. Well, have you recovered? Why are you still recovered? That's sad that you're still in recovery. It's just, we recovered. We're going on spiritual growth. And that has to be number one priority.
It's like working out, right? You can't just, and you know this way more than me, you can't just work out once and have consistent growth. This has to be something that's part of your, or like eating right. You can't just eat right, every once in a while.
It's what you do outside the gym. It's like when you go, like my kids, they always say they don't have any homework and they don't know why they're getting this grade. I'm like, it's what you do outside the school. That's why I call it homework that counts. So it's like it involves all kinds of aspects.
It's never over.
Kids and this and that.
Yeah.
So I guess we could say the spiritual growth is
Joe
never
and
over.
how many times have we told each other? I know I've told you for sure. You have the best version of me that there has ever been. Not that I'm so fantastic, but I have put true, real work on myself. I have a relationship with God. I'm a better person at this point, and that only benefits you. And that I think that's a part of the advantage when you go through the recovery process.
So when you've recovered from that hopeless state, then you're no longer hopeless and you have hope.
Yes, exactly. That was our last thing. So we didn't want to have just all negative things. We want to talk about hope. I always have thought to myself, nothing really has changed for me. I tell Joe all the time, even just if you talk about who I am as a person, right? The things I'm doing, I'd still be trying to grow my snake business, doing the same things that I'm doing. Nothing would change outside of Joe.
Positive. Sharon's positive and she has a great attitude. Part of the great thing about the Sharon and Joe show is you got different genders, and you have different personalities. Like for me, it wasn't like that.
I always believe that I could do it. I think anybody can.
Yeah, in me, it was more like shit happens. It just happens to me, and maybe I wasn't meant to be happy. But it doesn't mean that I could be the best version of myself I can. Pain was a motivator. It was through pain that I'm here today, and that was my mentality. When we started talking, and I was at that point in my recovery, that closed mind of happiness and peace, I began to open my mind to say, well, maybe there is a happily ever after. I never believed in fairy tales when I was a little kid. And that's why I was surprised, because I didn't know about monsters until I got entangled with one. And, I never believed in the happily ever after. So this God thought came into my mind to say, well, why don't you try to let love be a motivator? Like, I was paying attention to Sharon, and I don't believe that I call it realism, my attitude about life is negative, but I knew it wasn't positive, and I knew like life is a gift, and I just felt ungrateful many times because it didn't seem like that to me. It just seemed like a prison, like a purgatory in a way. But the thought of, well, why not let love be a motivator, and maybe you can find peace and serenity in this lifetime with somebody else.
We are cautious and I think fearful in this way because you have been hurt, and you're open. We're still dealing with CPTSD. For me, literally, granted, you're a huge change in my life, but the things that I would do, the things that I wanted to do, nothing has changed. Like, even when it comes to being with a narcissist, I wanted to have a family. I wanted to be with my family and live with my family. And like, that's what I wanted. I still want a family. I want a family with you now, but that's, and what I do, it's all the same. Like, I'm still the same, but at the same time, I've changed so many things about myself. I've recognized so many things, and I've gone through so much. I pray that you and I both have decades left, and I don't see any reason why you or me or anybody can't fulfill and live the life that they wanted to.
Yeah, that's your attitude, man. I love it, and I knew, like, I was like, well, why don't I try that kind of attitude? So yeah. I actually gained hope from that, in a way where I thought it was possible to find a little bit of serenity and peace if I was single and doing my own thing, and my kids were growing up, and I didn't have to worry about them. But to be with somebody else and share life, like, I didn't know what I was missing until I met you. And when we met, it was like there was this part of me that I never knew was missing that got filled. Now, I call it a God-shaped hole. that I tried to fill that hole with money, with power, with anything other than God. And I did fill that hole with God. And thank God he was there for me. And then that's why I say it's like he had his fingerprints all over this. He knew that you were out there for me. And I worked through my codependency. I wasn't interested in being with somebody else. It's just a miracle. There's one thing though I think we disagree on in a way when it comes to like dating after narcissistic abuse.
Okay, you guys, so you need to tell us who you not side with, but
Just give us your opinion.
Yeah, give us your
Because
opinion.
there's no
on
right
this.
or wrong.
So Joe and I were talking about how it is, like how you would meet somebody, so you've suffered from narcissistic abuse, you've gone through the recovery, you're ready to date, you're thinking, I wouldn't mind meeting somebody. How do you go about meeting them?
Well, neither one of us are dating coaches, so just so you know,
Yeah,
let's put it out.
that's true. And see, I feel like the way that I'm going to tell you is how most women would be. So you tell me, maybe not, like maybe I'm crazy, I don't know.
You're a little bit nutty.
Well, I am a little
In order
bit
to be with
nutty.
me, you got a little bit.
Yeah, well, that's true, actually. But really, if I was looking to meet a man, I would think to myself, okay, now I'm not talking about going to places I wouldn't typically go, but I'm talking about my church, right? I might think, you know what, I wonder if there's anyone single at church, or I wonder if anyone I know has a brother, or is someone divorced. Like I would think that, and I don't think that's wrong. Or I might also think to myself, okay, where is a good place that I could meet a man? Or like, and I wouldn't do a dating website, but yes, I would try to meet single men. Is what I would do.
I think that's creepy, and I think it's weird. I love you, and I know it may not be, and this is where I disagree with, because it's in total contradiction to how we met. I believe that
But I wasn't looking for a man. I'm talking about what I would do if I was looking for a man. See?
Well, I think God didn't want you to do that. He wanted you to do it the way I'm going to explain it. So here's my thought on this, is that on my road to recovery, when I started going back to the gym, when I was going to Bible study in church, when I was doing things that I didn't want to do, but I knew I should do because it's good for me, yoga, whatever the case was, is that I wasn't looking for anybody. But if I wanted to, it wouldn't be actively seeking out anybody. That's kind of like a narcissist in a way. I was like, shit.
I don't think so.
I'm kidding.
I really don't. Like, how else?
Have you ever heard the old adage is when you're not looking for someone is when God will put someone in your path?
Yes, but don't you think, like in all things in life, anything that I want to do, I have to pursue it. I can't just wait for it to
We're
show up.
talking about a soul.
Yes, and
How
I'm
does
gonna
one pursue a
that
soul,
man.
somebody's soul? You know what I mean?
I don't think it's weird.
I think people have souls, so it's not like pursuing just a person.
Yeah, but I don't mean
soul.
that I'm on a hunt. I just mean I
Well,
would
seeking.
try to meet single men.
Okay,
If I was looking for a boyfriend, that's what I would do.
This is what I would do. I would talk to God in my conversations I have him during the day and at nighttime in my bedroom, and I tell him like, hey, I call him Dad because I try to build an intimate, real relationship. So, Dad, I'm enjoying myself going to the park. I'm doing this, and I respect myself, and I love you. But I'm a little lonely, and I'm human. I'm not looking for like a one night stand. But if there's anybody out there that you meant like for me to meet, could you please put it in my path? Now you're laughing. I think that there's nothing funny about that. I think this is serious.
I can see that being a way.
Could you see me doing it?
I can't see you pursuing anybody.
Could you pursue me doing it this way?
Oh, that's the only way that could
the
ever be done for you.
Yes.
Yes.
So it's not like I would be sitting at home hiding or doing nothing.
Is that her there?
The card I passed, it would be through the things that I love to do in my activities, that if I was meant to find somebody, it would come. For me to be like, all right, this church has more women than that church. Now, it's almost like I'd be going to a bar and it's just like, I'm just looking to pick up somebody.
I would do that. I'm talking about places I would already go. But yes, in addition to that, I would try to think of places where single men would be.
Now, here's the difference. If we were in a church assembly, Sharon's eyes would be scanning the room. My eyes wouldn't, because I already told Dad, like, God, if there's somebody meant to be, and then be friendly with people and stuff.
I'd be looking for that single guy.
Because in my sick mind, my self-will would take over. Like, what I thought I wanted, here's the bottom line. My best thinking got me entangled in an abusive relationship for 20 years where I chose to stay, where I was delusional, self-seeking, trying to control somebody else. in a way where I wanted them to be, in denial. So I try to remember that, because if I don't let go and let God, I let go and let Joe. And just because I have empathy means that I'm not nuts. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's how I would do it, guys. And the way Sharon would do it, I love Sharon. She's brilliant. She's beautiful. She has great ideas. But I would just...
And I have a great idea how to meet men, ladies.
So, like, I would feel weird, like, scanning the church. And be like, well, that one's with this guy, and this one's really good looking. Maybe I'll just accidentally bump into her. Every time I try to do shit like that, I always wind up in a jackpot. But I was a recovered alcoholic and drug addict. I did many bad things in my life. And Sharon's not like that. So maybe Sharon can get away with that, but I can't, because I don't always know what's best for me, and I'll be looking for some whacked out... Like, I told Sharon this, and she agreed. I said, she's talking about some of her past relationships, and I said, oh, your picker's broke. Remember that? I said,
Yeah.
Your picker's broke. And she's like, what do you mean? I was like, you know your pointing finger?
That was, I think, the first night we ever spoke. You
Yeah.
said that to me.
Because we attracted a bunch of sick people, because with our codependency and our own issues, we are sick ourselves. Water seeks its own level. So this time around, I think I understand enough, like, how the spiritual aspect works, where it's like, the universe will hear me, God will hear me, and if it's meant to be, cool. And if not, guess what? I love myself.
It's a miracle
I
that
enjoy
Joe and I are
myself.
together. It really is.
So that was a difference in opinions on that. I don't know if those are wrong or right.
Yeah, tell us.
There
what you
are
think.
some wrongs, though. Like, if you got out of a narcissistic relationship and in a month or in 2 weeks, you're actively looking for somebody, or
Definitely.
yeah. So there are wrongs and rights as far as how long. I don't know. It's up to
Don't go
God.
through it again.
Yeah, but it was always been for us that we had to be okay with ourselves and love ourselves before we could love somebody else. And we did that separately. And by the grace of God, His mercy, not only did He save us from an impossible situation, He brought us together. And that's where I've opened my mind to, well, maybe we can be together and grow together. You know, the question is does this relationship bring you closer to God or further away? And thank God I can always say it's just closer, and be grateful for you every day of my life.
Oh, thank you. Well, I think that you're pretty swell yourself.
So give us your opinions. Tell us what you think about like this. But it's kind of a cool topic. If anything, it might bring some questions in your mind. Like, might totally closed off or ever meeting anybody again as a result
We
of...
can do more videos like this if you guys want. I mean, we can talk about dating and things like, trouble spots we run into, sticky situations.
Yeah, it's just some questions that you can bring to yourself to say, wow, so I'm gonna let this narcissistic relationship I was in prevent me from ever finding true love.
Yeah, you still have a life. Yeah.
Or I love my single life. And guess what? If there's somebody out there that does God says you should be, you're
single,
gonna be.
you and I almost were that type of person.
You
know what I mean? It worked out this way, but
we were. But to kind of back what I was saying, the recovery process and being on that path, we didn't even ask God to find anybody. He just brought us together. But you have to be on the road to spiritual growth.
Yes, absolutely. All right, so thank you for listening. Thank you, Joe, for coming and stopping by, and I will see you guys in a couple of days. Bye, everybody.
Bye, guys.